Well, hello there, and welcome to Wilbur's Weird and Wacky World. There are some subjects that are hard to discuss, some subjects that not everyone wants us talking about. So thanks for meeting me out here in the Nevada desert, where I'm fully equipped to handle any situation and teach you the latest facts on the most mind-boggling issues. Now, let's go UFO spotting and hunt down some conspiracies. What are you waiting for? Today, we're going to comb through my secret files and learn all about unidentified flying objects. There's always been a question burning into the thoughts of mankind, and it is, are we alone in the universe? Are there any other races, planets, communities out there like those we know on Earth? Are the often reported unidentified flying objects actually spacecrafts from another world piloted by aliens? If so, what do they want? Why haven't they made their presence known in an official manner? There are many different theories surrounding the possible answers and more. Strap in, as we're about to take off into the world of UFO conspiracy. Hey, here is a strange and exciting topic to tackle. You better buckle up before we dive into this wacky conspiracy theory. UFO conspiracy theories argue that various governments and politicians globally, most notably the officials of Washington, D.C., are hiding evidence of extraterrestrial unidentified flying objects and alien visitors. Such conspiracy theories commonly argue that Earth governments, especially the government of the United States, are in communication or cooperation with aliens despite public claims to the contrary. And further, that some of these theories claim that the governments are explicitly allowing alien abduction. Various UFO conspiracy ideas have grown like wildfire on the internet and were frequently featured on paranormal radio host Art Bell's program Coast to Coast AM. According to the Mutual UFO Network, aka MUFON, publications like the National Enquirer reported that a survey found 76% of participants felt the government was not revealing all it knew about UFOs. 54.5% thought UFOs definitely or probably existed, and 33% thought UFOs came from outer space. Whoa! Conspiracy theories abound. Let's continue seeking for the truth. Follow me. Over the years, there have been many notable people to have publicly stated that UFO evidence is being suppressed. This surprising list includes Senator Barry Goldwater, former NATO head of chief of the British Defense Staff, British Admiral Lord Hill Norton, former commanding officer Wright-Patterson Brigadier, General Arthur Exon, the first CIA director Vice Admiral Roscoe H. Hellencoetter, astronauts Gordon Cooper and Edgar Mitchell, and former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hellyer. Beyond their testimonies and reports, they have presented no evidence to substantiate their statements and claims. According to the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, little or no evidence exists to support them, despite significant research on the subject by non-governmental scientific agencies. So when did this all start? We're gonna have to go back many decades for that answer. On the night before Halloween in 1938, actor and radio personality Orson Welles directed the Mercury Theater on-the-air live radio adaptation of H.G. Wells' classic novel, The War of the Worlds. By mimicking a news broadcast, the show was quite realistic sounding for its time, and some listeners were fooled into thinking that a Martian invasion was underway in the United States. Widespread confusion was followed by outrage and controversy. Some later studies have argued that the contemporary press exaggerated the extent of the panic, but it remains clear that many people were caught up, to some degree, in the confusion. In other countries, reactions were similar. In 1949, part of the script for The War of the Worlds was read out over the radio in Quito, Ecuador, without announcement, as if it were a major piece of breaking news. Huge crowds of people emerged onto the streets and sought refuge inside churches with their families. When the radio station was informed of this, its announcers broadcast the fact that no invasion was happening. An angry mob formed and burned the station to the ground, causing between 6 and 20 deaths. Many other countries also experienced problems when broadcasting The War of the Worlds. According to U.S. Air Force Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, the Air Force files often mention the panicked aftermath of the 1938 War of the Worlds broadcast as a possible reaction of the public to confirmed evidence of UFOs. However, the files have not been made available to corroborate his assertions. During the 1940s, journalist Donald Keyhoe began investigating flying saucers for True magazine. Keyhoe was one of the first significant conspiracy theorists, asserting eventually that the saucers were from outer space and were on some sort of scouting mission. Keyhoe claimed to derive his theory from his contacts in Air Force and Navy intelligence. Project Sign, based at Air Technical Intelligence Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and its successors Project Grudge and Project Blue Book were officially assigned to investigate the flying saucers. Edward Ruppelt's book, The Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, reports that many people within these research groups did in fact support the conclusion that the flying saucers were from outer space. Keyhoe later founded the National Investigations Committee of Aerial Phenomena, which is also known as NICAP. NICAP is a civilian investigation group that asserted the US government was lying about UFOs and covering up information that could be shared with the public. NICAP had many influential board members, including Roscoe H. Hellencoder, the first director of the CIA. To date, no substantiating evidence for NICAP's assertions has been presented beyond accounts that are anecdotal and documented hearsay or rumor. One night, residents of Los Angeles, California got the fright of their lives. The Great Los Angeles Raid, also known as the Battle of Los Angeles, is the name given by modern sources to the imaginary enemy attack and anti-aircraft artillery barrage that took place from late February 24th to early February 25th, 1942 over Los Angeles, California. Initially, the target of the aerial barrage was thought to be an attacking force from Japan, but Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox, speaking at a press conference shortly afterward, called the incident a false alarm. A small number of modern-day UFOologists have suggested the reported targets were extraterrestrial spacecraft. When documenting the incident in 1983, the U.S. Office of Air Force History attributed the event to a case of war nerves, likely triggered by a lost weather balloon and exacerbated by stray flares and shell bursts from adjoining batteries. Wacky wisdom! I think we blew that one right open! Let's keep this between us and dive into more details. In 1946 and 1947, numerous reports occurred of so-called ghost rockets appearing over Scandinavian countries, primarily Sweden, which then spread into other European countries. One USAF top-secret document from 1948 stated that Swedish Air Force intelligence informed them that some of their investigators felt the reported objects were not only real, but could not be explained as having earthly origins. Similarly, 20 years later, Greek physicist Dr. Paul Santorini publicly stated that in 1947 he was put in charge of a Greek military investigation into reports of ghost rockets sighted over Greece. Again, they quickly concluded the objects were real and not of conventional origin. Santorini claimed their investigation was killed by US scientists and high military officials who had already concluded the objects were extraterrestrial in origin and feared public panic because no defense existed. It was during this time that the world's most famous alien encounter took place. In 1947, the United States Air Force issued a press release stating that a flying disc had been recovered near Roswell, New Mexico. This press release was quickly withdrawn, and officials stated that a weather balloon had been misidentified. The Roswell case quickly faded from the attention of most UFOologists until the 1970s. Speculation persisted despite the official denial that an alien spacecraft crashed near Roswell. For example, retired Brigadier General Arthur E. Exon told researchers Kevin D. Randall and Donald R. Schmidt that a spacecraft had crashed, alien bodies were recovered, and the event was covered up by the US government. Exon further claimed he was aware of a very secretive UFO controlling committee, made up primarily of very high-ranking military officers and intelligence people. His nickname for this group was the Unholy 13. In the 1990s, the US military published 2 reports disclosing the true nature of the crashed aircraft, a surveillance balloon from Project Mogul. Nevertheless, the Roswell incident continues to be of interest in popular media, and conspiracy theories surrounding the event persist. Roswell has been described as the world's most famous, most exhaustively investigated, and most thoroughly debunked UFO claim. Weird and wild stuff! I'm Wilbur, and I'm glad you're with me on this truth-seeking mission. Ready to investigate? Here we go! In 1948, Air Force pilot Thomas Mantell was killed in a crash while pursuing what he described as a metallic object of tremendous size. Project Blue Book concluded that Mantell had lost control of his aircraft while chasing a then-classified Skyhook balloon. Some UFOologists reject Blue Book's conclusion because of its initial suggestion that Mantell was chasing Venus or a comet. The US Air Force may have planted the seeds of UFO conspiracy theories with their 1947 Project Sign, which later became Project Grudge and then Project Blue Book. Edward J. Ruppelt, the first director of Blue Book, characterized the Air Force's public behavior regarding UFOs as schizophrenic, alternately open and transparent, then secretive and dismissive. Ruppelt also revealed that in mid-1948, Project Sign issued a top-secret estimate of the situation, concluding that the flying saucers were not only real, but probably extraterrestrial in origin. According to Ruppelt, the estimate was ordered destroyed by Air Force Chief of Staff Hoyt Vandenberg. Project Sign's final report, published in early 1949, stated that while some UFOs appeared to represent actual aircraft, data were insufficient to determine their origin. Project Blue Book wouldn't be the only government-run branch looking into the existence of extraterrestrial visits to our planet. Some UFOologists have claimed the existence of a US government group called the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, allegedly established by General Douglas MacArthur, that was supposedly formed to investigate crashed and retrieved flying saucers. It was during the 1950s that the world saw an increase in both governmental and civilian investigative efforts and reports of public disinformation and suppression of evidence both here and around the world. The UK Ministry of Defence's UFO project has its roots in a study commissioned in 1950 by the MOD's then Chief Scientific Advisor, the great radar scientist Sir Henry Tizard. As a result of his insistence that UFO sightings should not be dismissed without some form of proper scientific study, the department set up the Flying Saucer Working Party, or FSWP. In August 1950, Montanan baseball manager Nicholas Mariana filmed several UFOs with his color 16mm camera. Project Blue Book was called in, and after inspecting the film, Mariana claimed it was returned to him with critical footage removed, clearly showing the objects as disc-shaped. The incident sparked nationwide media attention. Frank Scully's 1950 book, Behind the Flying Saucers, suggests that the US government had recovered a crashed flying saucer and its dead occupants near Aztec, New Mexico in 1948. It was later revealed that Scully had been the victim of a prank by two veteran confidence artists. Donald Keyhoe was a retired US Marine who wrote a series of popular books and magazine articles that were very influential in shaping public opinion, arguing that UFOs were indeed real and that the US government was suppressing UFO evidence. Keyhoe's first article on the subject came out in True magazine during January of 1950 and was a national sensation. His first book, Flying Saucers Are Real, also came out in 1950, about the same time as Frank Scully's book, and was a bestseller. In 1956, Keyhoe helped establish NICAP, a powerful civilian UFO investigating group with many inside sources. Keyhoe became its director and continued his attacks on the Air Force. Although contemporary critics also charged that the United States Air Force was perpetrating a cover-up with its Project Blue Book. Canadian radio engineer Wilbert B. Smith, who worked on the Canadian Department of Transport, was interested in flying saucer propulsion technology and wondered if the assertions in the just-published Scully and Keyhoe books were factual. In September 1950, he had the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. arrange contact with U.S. officials to try and discover the truth of the matter. Smith was briefed by Dr. Robert Sarbacher, a physicist and consultant to the Defense Department's Research and Development Board. Other correspondence having to do with Keyhoe needing to get clearance to publish another article on Smith's theories of UFO propulsion indicated that Bush and his group were operating out of the Research and Development Board. Smith then briefed superiors in the Canadian government, leading to the establishment of Project Magnet, a small Canadian government UFO research effort. Canadian documents and Smith's private papers were uncovered in the late 1970s, and by 1984, other alleged documents emerged, claiming the existence of a highly secret UFO oversight committee of scientists and military people called Majestic 12, again naming Vannevar Bush. Sarbacher was also interviewed in the 1980s and corroborated the information in Smith's memos and correspondence. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, Smith granted public interviews and, among other things, stated that he had been lent crashed UFO material for analysis by a highly secret US government group which he wouldn't name. A few weeks after the Robertson panel, the Air Force issued Regulation 200-2, ordering airbase officers to publicly discuss UFO incidents only if they were judged to have been solved, and to classify all the unsolved cases to keep them out of the public eye. In addition, UFO investigative duties started to be taken on by the newly formed 4602nd Air Intelligence Squadron, AISS, of the Air Defense Command. The 4602nd AISS was tasked with investigating only the most important UFO cases having intelligence or national security implications. These were deliberately siphoned away from Blue Book, leaving Blue Book to deal with the more trivial reports. My head's spinning. I'm seeing grays. Let's keep this talk going, but be careful, they could be listening in. In 1954, an automatic working station for UFO monitoring was installed at Shirley's Bay near Ottawa in Canada. After this station detected the first suspicious event, all data gained by this station was classified as secret, although the cameras of the monitoring station could not make any pictures because of fog. 1956 saw the publication of Gray Barker's They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, the book which publicized the idea of sinister men in black who appeared to UFO witnesses and warned them to keep quiet. There has been continued speculation that the men in black are government agents who harass and threaten UFO witnesses. Also in 1956, the group Foundation for Earth-Space Relations, led by film producer Zadie Soffit, tested their own flying saucer outside the Long Island town of Ridge Landing. It is speculated in Robertson's The Long Island Saucer that an FBI cover-up silenced witnesses. On January 22, 1958, when Donald Keyhoe appeared on CBS television, his statements on UFOs were pre-censored by the Air Force. During the show, when Keyhoe tried to depart from the censored script to reveal something that has never been disclosed before, CBS cut the sound, later stating Keyhoe was about to violate predetermined security standards and about to say something he wasn't authorized to release. What Keyhoe was about to reveal were 4 publicly unknown military studies concluding UFOs were interplanetary, including the 1948 Project Sign estimate of the situation, and a 1952 Project Blue Book engineering analysis of UFO motion presented at the Robertson panel. Astronaut Gordon Cooper reported suppression of a flying saucer movie filmed in high clarity by 2 Edwards AFB range photographers on May 3, 1957. Cooper said he viewed developed negatives of the object, clearly showing a dish-like object with a dome on top and something like holes or ports in the dome. When later interviewed by James McDonald, the photographers and another witness confirmed the story. Cooper said military authorities then picked up the film and neither he nor the photographers ever heard what happened to it. The incident was also reported in a few newspapers, such as the Los Angeles Times. The official explanation was that the photographers had filmed a weather balloon distorted by hot desert air. There's little doubt the 50s was the height of UFO hysteria. Things began slowing down as we moved towards the 1960s and 1970s. In 1973, Robert Emenegger and Alan Sandler of Los Angeles, California were in contact with officials at Norton Air Force Base in order to make a documentary film. Emenegger and Sandler report that the Air Force officials, including one who is named Paul Shartle, suggested incorporating UFO information in the documentary, including as its centerpiece genuine footage of a 1971 UFO landing at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Furthermore, says Emenegger, he was given a tour of Holloman AFB and was shown where officials conferred with extraterrestrial biological entities, also known as EBEs. This was supposedly not the first time the US had met these aliens, as Emenegger reported that his US military sources had been monitoring signals from an alien group with which they were unfamiliar. And did their ET guests know anything about them? The ETs said no. The documentary was released in 1974 as UFOs, Past, Present, and Future, narrated by Rod Serling, contained only a few seconds of the Holloman UFO footage, the remainder of the landing depicted with illustrations and reenactments. When questioned about the film in 1988, Shartle said that it was genuine and that he had seen it several times. In 1976, a televised documentary report, UFOs, It Has Begun, written by Robert Emenegger, was presented by Rod Serling, Burgess Meredith, and Jose Ferrer. Some sequences were recreated based upon the statements of eyewitnesses and observers, together with the findings and conclusions of governmental, civil, and military investigations. The documentary uses a hypothetical UFO landing at Holloman AFB as a backdrop. The late 1970s also saw the beginning of controversy centered on Paul Benowitz of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Benowitz claimed the existence of a plot involving an extensive network of UFO bases tied to an alien colonization and control scheme to subjugate the human race. After he saw the hypnosis sessions of Myrna Hansen, who claimed to have UFO experiences, he became convinced that cattle mutilations were due to aliens. As a result, Benowitz claimed to have uncovered evidence of aliens controlling humans through electromagnetic devices, and furthermore claimed that UFOs were regularly flying near Kirtland Air Force Base and the nearby Manzo Nuclear Weapons Storage Facility and Coyote Canyon Test Area. Convinced that he was intercepting electronic communications originating from alien spacecraft located outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, Benowitz soon believed that he had located a secret alien facility that he called Dulce Base. By 1982, Benowitz began to spread his ideas regarding Dulce Base to others in the ufology community. In 1988, he wrote a paper entitled Project Beta, detailing how the base might be successfully attacked. Benowitz detailed his assertions to the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, who regarded him as a deluded paranoid. UFOologist William Moore claims that he tried to push Benowitz, who had been in a mental health facility on 3 occasions after suffering severe delusional paranoia, into a mental breakdown by feeding him false information about aliens. Former Special Agent for the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations Richard Doty claimed that in the 1980s he was tasked with hoaxing documents and feeding false information to UFO researchers, including Benowitz.
Wait, I think we might have been followed. All right, it's safe. Let's keep going.
In 1982, a set of documents known as the Majestic 12 documents surfaced. According to them, there was secret high-level US government interest in UFOs dating to the 1940s. Upon examination, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, declared the documents to be completely bogus, and many UFOologists consider them to be an elaborate hoax. Years later, in November 1989, American conspiracy theorist Bob Lazar appeared in a special interview with investigative reporter George Knapp on Las Vegas TV station KLAS. Lazar claimed to have worked on reverse engineering purported extraterrestrial technology at a site called S4, located several kilometers south of the Area 51 Groom Lake operating location. In his interview with Knapp, Lazar said he first thought the saucers were secret terrestrial aircraft whose test flights must have been responsible for many UFO reports. Gradually, on closer examination and from having been shown multiple briefing documents, Lazar came to the conclusion that the discs must have been of extraterrestrial origin. He claims that they use moscovium, an element that decays in a fraction of a second to warp space, and that he has since met gray aliens from the Zeta Reticuli star system. According to the Los Angeles Times, he never obtained the degrees he claims to hold from MIT and Caltech. The Mutual UFO Network held their 1989 annual convention in Las Vegas, Nevada on July 1st, 1989. UFOologist Bill Moore was scheduled as a main speaker, and he refused to submit his paper for review prior to the convention, and also announced that he would not answer any follow-up questions as was common practice. Unlike most of the convention's attendees, Moore did not stay at the same hotel that was hosting the convention. When he spoke, Moore said that he and others had been part of an elaborate, long-term disinformation campaign begun primarily to discredit Paul Bennewitz. My role in the affair was primarily that of a freelancer providing information on Bennewitz's current thinking and activities. Air Force Sergeant Richard C. Doty was also involved, said Moore. Though Moore thought Doty was simply a pawn in a much larger game, as was I. One of their goals, Moore said, was to disseminate information and watch as it was passed from person to person in order to study information channels. Moore said that he was in a rather unique position in the disinformation campaign. Judging by the positions of the people I knew to be directly involved in it, the disinformation definitely had something to do with national security. There was no way I was going to allow the opportunity to pass me by. I would play the disinformation game, get my hands dirty just often enough to lead those directing the process into believing I was doing what they wanted me to do, and all the while continuing to burrow my way into the matrix so as to learn as much as possible about who was directing it and why. Once he finished the speech, Moore immediately left the hotel. He left Las Vegas that same night. Moore's claims sent shockwaves through the small, tight-knit UFO community, which remains divided as to the reliability of his assertions. Do you believe this? There's enough information here to build a case. What do you think? Things were pretty quiet on the UFO front until November 24th, 1992. It was on that date a UFO reportedly crashed in South Haven Park, Shirley, New York. A Long Island MUFON researcher investigated the crash. 4 years later, on June 12, 1996, Ford was arrested and charged with plotting to poison several local politicians by sneaking radium in their toothpaste. On advice of counsel, Ford pleaded insanity and was committed to the Mid-Hudson Psychiatric Center. Critics say the charges are a frame-up. During the 90s, there was nearly as many UFO experts as there was sightings. During this period, Philip Schneider, an engineer and geologist formerly working for the US government, made a few appearances at UFO conventions in the 1990s, espousing essentially a new version of the theories mentioned above. He claimed to have played a role in the construction of deep underground military bases, DUMBs, across the United States, and as a result, he said he had been exposed to classified information of various sorts, as well as having personal experience with EBEs. He claimed to have survived the Dulce Base catastrophe, in which a firefight broke out between the military and a group of large aliens known as Greys. He died by suicide on January 17, 1996, after a series of lectures given in late 1995 on topics including the black budget and underground alien bases. Others believe that Schneider did not take his own life, and that he was actually murdered by the government. Slowly but surely, evidence that was left under lock and key for many years began to slowly come to light. 8 files from 1978 to 1987 on UFO sightings were first released on May 14, 2008 to the National Archives website by the British Ministry of Defence. 200 files were set to be made public by 2012. The files are correspondence from the public sent to government officials, such as the MOD and Margaret Thatcher. Copies of Lieutenant Colonel Halt's letter regarding the sighting of RAF Woodbridge to the UK Ministry of Defence were routinely released by the USA's base public affairs staff throughout the 1980s until the base closed. The MOD released the files due to requests under the Freedom of Information Act. The files included, among other things, alien craft flying over Liverpool and Waterloo Bridge in London. In the early 2000s, the concept of disclosure became increasingly popular in the UFO conspiracy community, that the government had classified and withheld information on alien contact and full disclosure was needed, and was pursued by activist lobbying groups. In 1993, Stephen M. Greer founded the Disclosure Project to promote the concept. In May 2001, Greer held a press conference at the National Press Club in DC that demanded Congress hold hearings on secret US involvement with UFOs and extraterrestrials. It was described by an attending BBC reporter as the strangest ever news conference hosted by Washington's August National Press Club. The Disclosure Project's claims were met by derision by skeptics and spokespeople for the US Air Force. In 2013, the production company CHD2 LLC held a citizen hearing on disclosure at the National Press Club in DC from April 29th to May 3rd, 2013. The group paid former US Senator Mike Gravel and former Representatives Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick, Roscoe Bartlett, Merrill Cook, Darlene Hooley, and Lynn Woolsey $20,000 each to participate, and to preside over panels of academics and former government and military officials discussing UFOs and extraterrestrials. Allegations of suppression of UFO-related evidence have persisted for many decades. Some conspiracy theories also claim that some governments might have removed and/or destroyed or suppressed physical evidence. Some examples follow. On July 7, 1947, William Rhodes photographed an unusual object over Phoenix, Arizona. The photos appeared in a Phoenix newspaper and a few other papers. An Army Air Force intelligence officer and an FBI agent interviewed Rhodes on August 29th and convinced him to surrender the negatives, which he did the next day. He was informed he wouldn't be getting them back, but later he tried, unsuccessfully, to retrieve them. The photos were analyzed and subsequently appeared in some classified Air Force UFO intelligence reports. A June 27, 1950 movie of A Flying Disc over Louisville, Kentucky, taken by a Louisville Courier-Journal photographer, had the USAF Directors of Counterintelligence, AFOSI, and Intelligence discussing in memos how to best obtain the movie and interview the photographer without revealing Air Force interest. One memo suggested the FBI be used, then precluded the FBI getting involved. Another memo said it would be nice if OSI could arrange to secure a copy of the film in some covert manner, but if that wasn't feasible, one of the Air Force scientists might have to negotiate directly with the newspaper. In a recent interview, the photographer confirmed meeting with military intelligence and still having the film in his possession until then, but refused to say what happened to the film after that. In another 1950 movie incident from Montana, Nicholas Mariana filmed some unusual aerial objects and eventually turned the film over to the US Air Force, but insisted that the first part of the film, clearly showing the objects as spinning discs, had been removed when it was returned to him. According to some conspiracy theorists, during the military investigation of green fireballs in New Mexico, UFOs were photographed by a tracking camera over White Sands Proving Grounds on April 27, 1949. They claim that the final report in 1951 on the green fireball investigation claimed there was insufficient data to determine anything. Conspiracy theorists claim that documents later uncovered by Dr. Bruce Maccabee indicate that triangulation was accomplished. The conspiracy theorists also claim that the data reduction and photographs showed 4 objects about 30 feet in diameter, flying in formation at high speed and an altitude of about 30 miles. According to conspiracy theorists, Maccabee says this result was apparently suppressed from the final report. A March 1, 1967 memo directed to all USAF divisions from USAF Lieutenant General Hewitt Wellis, Assistant Vice Chief of Staff, stated that unverified information indicated that unknown individuals impersonating USAF officers and other military personnel had been harassing civilian UFO witnesses, warning them not to talk and also confiscating film, referring specifically to the Helflin incident. AFOSI was to be notified if any personnel were to become aware of any other incidents.
This is a game of intrigue. Let's keep playing.
John Callahan, former division chief of the Accidents and Investigations branch of the FAA, Washington, D.C., also a Disclosure Project witness, said that following the Japan Airlines Flight 1628 incident that involved a giant UFO over Alaska, recorded by air and ground radar, the FAA conducted an investigation. Callahan held a briefing a few days later for President Reagan's Scientific Study Group, the FBI, and CIA. After the briefing, one of the CIA agents told everybody they were never there and this never happened, adding they were fearful of public panic. According to one theory related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the CIA killed Kennedy in order to prevent him from leaking information to the Soviet Union about a covert program to reverse engineer alien technology. Nick Cook, an aviation investigative journalist for Jane's Information Group and researcher of Billion Dollar Secret and author of The Hunt for Zero Point, claims to have uncovered documentary evidence that top-secret U.S. defense industry technology has been developed by government-backed defense industry programs. Beginning in the 1940s, using research conducted by Nazi scientists during World War II, and recovered by Allied military intelligence, then taken to the US and developed further with the collaboration of the same former German scientists at top-secret facilities established at White Sands, New Mexico, and later at Area 51, allegedly resulting in production of real-world prototype operational supersonic crafts actually tested and used in clandestine military exercises, with other developments incorporated later into spy aircraft tasked with overflying hostile countries. The UFO story that evidence of alien technologies being suppressed and removed or destroyed was generated and then promoted by the CIA beginning in 1947 as false-led disinformation to cover it all up for the sake of national security, particularly during the Cold War, at a time when, his investigations found, the Soviet Union too was developing its own top-secret high-tech UFO craft. Cook's conclusions, alleging suppression of evidence of advanced human technology instead of alien, together with what he presents as declassified top-secret documents and blueprints and his interviews of various experts, some doubtful reliability, was developed and broadcast as a feature documentary on British television in 2005 as UFOs: The Secret Evidence, and in the US in 2006 as a two-part episode on the History Channel's UFO Files retitled An Alien History of Planet Earth, with an added introduction by actor William Shatner. The History Channel program teaser promised a look at the rumors of classified military aircraft incorporating alien technology into their designs.
What's the real truth? Keep seeking and it will reveal itself. That's a Wilbur quote you can take home to mama.
In 1993, Stephen M. Greer founded the Disclosure Project to promote the concept of disclosing allegedly suppressed evidence of extraterrestrials. In May 2001, Greer held a press conference at the National Press Club in D.C. that featured 20 retired Air Force, Federal Aviation Administration, and intelligence officers, who demanded that Congress begin hearings on secret U.S. involvement with UFOs and extraterrestrials. In 1997, one of the most incredible and historic UFO-related happenings the world has ever seen occurred over the state of Arizona. The Phoenix Lights, sometimes called the Lights over Phoenix, were a series of widely sighted, unidentified flying objects or UFOs observed in the skies over the U.S. states of Arizona, Nevada, and the Mexican state of Sonora on March 13, 1997. Lights of varying descriptions were seen by thousands of people between 1930 and 2230 Mountain Standard Time, in a space of about 300 miles or 480 kilometers from the Nevada line through Phoenix to the edge of Tucson. There were two distinct events involved in the incident: a triangular formation of lights seen to pass over the state, and a series of stationary lights seen in the Phoenix area. The United States Air Force identified the second group of lights as flares dropped by an A-10 Warthog aircraft that were on training exercises at the Barry Goldwater Range in southwest Arizona. Witnesses claim to have observed a huge Carpenter square-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights or possibly light-emitting engines. Fife Symington, the governor at the time, was one witness to this incident. He later called the object otherworldly. The lights were reported to have reappeared in 2007 and 2008, but these lights were quickly attributed to, respectively, military flares dropped by a fighter aircraft at Luke Air Force Base and flares attached to helium balloons released by a civilian. At about 1855 Pacific Standard Time, or 1955 Mountain Standard Time, a man reported seeing a V-shaped object above Henderson, Nevada. He said it was about the size of a Boeing 747 aircraft, sounded like rushing wind, and had 6 lights on its leading edge. The lights reportedly traversed northwest to the southeast. An unidentified former police officer from Paulden, Arizona, is claimed to have been the next person to report a sighting after leaving his house at 2015 Mountain Standard Time. As he was driving north, he allegedly saw a cluster of reddish or orange lights in the sky, comprising 4 lights together and a 5th light trailing them. Each of the individual lights in the formation appeared to the witness to consist of 2 separate point sources of orange light. He returned home and through binoculars watched the lights until they disappeared south over the horizon. Lights were also reportedly seen in the areas of Prescott and Prescott Valley. At approximately 2017 Mountain Standard Time, callers began reporting the object was definitely solid, because it blocked out much of the starry sky as it passed over. John Kaiser was standing outside with his wife and sons in Prescott Valley when they noticed a cluster of lights to the west-northwest of their position. The lights formed a triangular pattern, but all of them appeared to be red except the light at the nose of the object, which was distinctly white. The object or objects, which had been observed for approximately 2 to 3 minutes with binoculars, then passed directly over the observers, were seen to bank to the right and then disappeared in the night sky to the southeast of Prescott Valley. The altitude could not be determined, however the object was fairly low and made no sound whatsoever. The National UFO Reporting Center received the following report from the Prescott area. While doing astrophotography, I observed 5 yellow-white lights in a V formation moving slowly from the northwest across the sky to the northeast, then turn almost due south and continue until out of sight. The point of the V was in the direction of movement. The first 3 lights were in a fairly tight V, while 2 of the lights were further back along the lines of the V's legs. During the northwest-northeast transit, one of the trailing lights moved up and joined the 3 and then dropped back to the trailing position. I estimated the 3-light V to cover about 0.5 degrees of sky and the whole group of 5 lights to cover about 1 degree of sky. At the town of Dewey, 10 miles or 16 kilometers east of Prescott, Arizona, 6 people saw a large cluster of lights while driving northbound on Highway 69. Tim Lay and his wife Bobby, his son Hal, and his grandson Damian Turnage first saw the lights when they were above Prescott Valley about 65 miles or 100 kilometers away from them. At first, the lights appeared to them as 5 separate and distinct lights in an arc shape, as if they were on top of a balloon. But they soon realized that the lights appeared to be moving towards them. Over the next 10 or so minutes, the lights appeared to come closer. The distance between the lights increased, and they took the shape of an upside-down V. Eventually, when the lights appeared to be a couple miles away, the witnesses could make out a shape that looked like a 60-degree carpenter square, with the 5 lights set into it, with 1 at the front and 2 on each side. Soon, the object with the embedded lights appeared to be coming right down the street where they lived, about 100 to 150 feet or 30 to 45 meters above them, traveling so slowly that it appeared to hover and was silent. The object then seemed to pass over their heads and went through a V opening in the peaks of the mountain range towards Squaw Peak Mountain and toward the direction of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport. Witnesses in Glendale, a suburb north of Phoenix, saw the object pass overhead at an altitude high enough to become obscured by the thin clouds. This was at approximately between 2030 and 2045 Mountain Standard Time. When the triangular formation entered the Phoenix area, Bill Greiner, a cement driver hauling a load down a mountain north of Phoenix, described the second group of lights. "I'll never be the same. Before this, if anybody had told me they saw a UFO, I would have said, yeah, and I believe in the Tooth Fairy. Now I've got a whole new view, and I may be just a dumb truck driver, but I've seen something that don't belong here." Greiner stated that the lights hovered over the area for more than 2 hours. A report came from a young man in the Kingman area who stopped his car at a payphone to report the incident. The young man, en route to Los Angeles, called from a phone booth to report having seen a large and bizarre cluster of stars moving slowly in the northern sky. A repeat of the lights occurred February 6, 2007, and was recorded by the local Fox News television station. According to military officials and the Federal Aviation Administration, these were flares dropped by the F-16 aircraft training at Luke Air Force Base. On April 21, 2008, lights were again reported over Phoenix by local residents. These lights appeared to change from square to triangular formation over time.
Wilbur's Wacky World continues. Are you ready to follow the next lead? Let's do it.
A Valley resident reported that shortly after the lights appeared, 3 jets were seen heading west in the direction of the lights. An official from Luke Air Force Base denied any United States Air Force activity in the area. On April 22, 2008, a resident of Phoenix told the newspaper that the lights were nothing more than his neighbor releasing helium balloons with flares attached. This was confirmed by a police helicopter. The following day, a Phoenix resident who declined to be identified in news reports stated that he had attached flares to helium balloons and released them from his backyard.
Wow, what a weird and wacky world this is! I should know. I've been out here in the Nevada desert using the latest technology to investigate the truth of what's really going on. So this subject really gets my gizzards. Now let's keep talking.
Imagery of the Phoenix lights falls into 2 categories: images of the triangular formation seen prior to 2200 Mountain Standard Time in Prescott and Dewey, and images of the 2200 Mountain Standard Time Phoenix event. Almost all known images are of the second event. All known images were produced using a variety of commercially available camcorders and cameras. There are no known images taken by equipment designed for scientific analysis, nor are there any known images taken using high-powered optics or night vision equipment. There are few known images of the Prescott-Dewey lights. Television station KSAZ reported that an individual named Richard Curtis recorded a detailed video that purportedly showed the outline of a spacecraft, but that the video had been lost. The only other known video is of poor quality and shows a group of lights with no craft visible. During the Phoenix event, numerous still photographs and videotapes were made, distinctly showing a series of lights appearing at a regular interval, remaining illuminated for several moments and then going out. These images have been repeatedly aired by documentary television channels such as the Discovery Channel and the History Channel as part of their UFO documentary programming. The most frequently seen sequence shows what appears to be an arc of lights appearing one by one, then going out one by one. UFO advocates claim that these images show that the lights were some form of running light or other aircraft illumination along the leading edge of a large craft, estimated to be as large as a mile or 1.6 kilometers in diameter, hovering over the city of Phoenix.
Wacky wonders! Who would have known things could be this strange? Let's dive into the evidence.
Other similar sequences reportedly taken over a half-hour period show differing numbers of lights in a V or arrowhead array. Thousands of witnesses throughout Arizona also reported a silent, mile-wide V or boomerang-shaped craft with varying numbers of huge orbs. A significant number of witnesses reported that the craft was silently gliding directly overhead at low altitude. The first-hand witnesses consistently reported that the lights appeared as canisters of swimming light, while the underbelly of the craft was undulating, like looking through water. However, skeptics claim that the video is evidence that mountains not visible at night partially obstructed views from certain angles, thereby bolstering the claim that the lights were more distant than UFO advocates claim. UFO advocate Jim Delatoso claimed to have performed spectral analysis of photographs and video imagery that proved the lights could not have been produced by a man-made source. Delatoso claimed to have used software called Image Pro Plus, exact version unknown, to determine the amount of red, green, and blue in the various photographic and video images and construct histograms of the data, which were then compared to several photographs known to be of flares. Several sources have pointed out, however, that it is impossible to determine the spectral signature of a light source based solely on photographic or video imagery, as film and electronics inherently alter the spectral signature of a light source by shifting hue in the visible spectrum, and experts in spectroscopy have dismissed his claims as being scientifically invalid. Normal photographic equipment also eliminates light outside the visible spectrum. For example, infrared and ultraviolet, that would be necessary for a complete spectral analysis. The maker of Image Pro Plus, Media Cybernetic, has stated that its software is incapable of performing spectroscopic analysis.
Wondrous wackiness! Is this real or is this fiction? We'll have to keep looking.
Cognitech, an independent video laboratory, superimposed video imagery taken of the Phoenix Lights onto video imagery it shot during daytime from the same location. In the composite image, the lights are seen to extinguish at the moment they reach the Estrella mountain range, which is visible in the daytime, but invisible in the footage shot at night. A broadcast by local Fox Broadcasting Company affiliate KSAZ-TV claimed to have performed a similar test that showed the lights were in front of the mountain range and suggested that the Cognitech data might have been altered. Dr. Paul Scowen, visiting professor of astronomy at Arizona State University, performed a third analysis using daytime imagery overlaid with video shot of the lights, and his findings were consistent with Cognitech. The Phoenix New Times subsequently reported the television station had simply overlaid two video tracks on a video editing machine without using a computer to match the zoom and scale of the two images. We may never know the truth behind UFOs or the various theories surrounding them. Sometimes, just not being able to explain things is what keeps our lives interesting. As one popular television series once stated, "The truth is out there. Maybe one day you'll be the one who finds it."
We've done it! We've learned everything we can about this for now. Let's keep connecting the dots and revealing the hidden truth together. Enter Wilbur's weird and wacky world for more history of mystery. And if you can't find me, don't worry, I'll find you.